The movie apparently is not very good. Again, the star, Rachel Zegler, is unbelievably charmless in public. Studios really need to go back to what they originally did, which was tell your stars to shut up and not say things, because no one is paying to hear your star say offensive things off the screen.
Rachel Zegler, she's the young woman that was cast as Snow White. It has proven to be Disney's worst investment ever in the history.
Disney's latest live-action remake, Snow White 2025, has quickly become one of the most disastrous releases in the company's history. What was meant to be a fresh reimagining of a beloved classic has instead turned into a cautionary tale of bloated budgets, poor creative decisions, and failed attempts at modern storytelling. Now, Disney finds itself in full damage control mode, with CEO Bob Iger and the studio's leadership scrambling to salvage what they can. Reports indicate that the film went through at least 3 rounds of reshoots. Always a bad sign for a major production. These last-minute changes resulted in a movie that feels disjointed and riddled with inconsistencies. From the very beginning, Snow White 2025 was mired in controversy. The project was meant to be a fresh, modernized take on the beloved 1937 animated classic, but instead, it became a lightning rod for criticism from both casual audiences and die-hard Disney fans. Much of the backlash stemmed from lead actress Rachel Zegler's public statements about the original film.
And to everyone who hates when I win, the winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her.
In multiple interviews, she appeared to dismiss the 1937 version as outdated, irrelevant, and even problematic by today's standards. She described Prince Charming as a weird stalker, criticized Snow White's romantic storyline, and emphasized that the new version would be about female empowerment rather than traditional fairy tale romance. While modern reinterpretations of classic stories can certainly work, many fans felt that Zegler's comments were needlessly dismissive of the film that made Snow White an icon in the first place. The backlash only grew when older interviews resurfaced, showing Zegler openly mocking the original film's themes and legacy. Rather than framing the remake as a loving homage, her remarks suggested a fundamental rejection of the source material, alienating longtime Disney supporters who cherish the classic story. Social media quickly turned against her, with viral compilations of her interviews fueling the perception that she viewed the role, and even Disney fans, with a sense of disdain. Adding to the controversy, early promotional material emphasized sweeping changes to the story, including the replacement of the 7 dwarfs with a diverse group of magical beings referred to as the Bandits. This decision, meant to avoid stereotypes, was widely criticized as unnecessary and even condescending to the original film's legacy.
That despite my flaws, and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them, people will wait in line to see.
The backlash reached new heights when set photos leaked, revealing that only one of the 7 characters was actually a little person, prompting accusations that Disney had sidelined actors with dwarfism. Behind the scenes, the film's creative process was plagued by confusion and indecision. Director Mark Webb, best known for the Amazing Spider-Man films, was reportedly constrained by corporate mandates, struggling to find a balance between honoring the original and injecting modern themes. Producer Aaron Harberts, known for his work on Star Trek, Discovery also faced difficulties as executives constantly revised their vision for the film. Meanwhile, screenwriter Greta Gerwig, celebrated for her success with Barbie, 2023, was brought in to help rework the script. But even her involvement couldn't resolve the film's inconsistent tone.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There is a big focus on her love story, with a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird.
Early internal screenings raised major red flags. Reports from test audiences pointed to glaring pacing issues, a lack of emotional depth, and characters who felt underdeveloped or unrelatable. Instead of tackling these fundamental storytelling flaws, Disney focused on controlling the film's narrative in the press. Executives downplayed concerns, insisting that the backlash was fueled by bad faith critics who refused to accept a modernized Snow White. However, the audience response suggested otherwise. Fans weren't rejecting the idea of a fresh take. They were rejecting what seemed like a cynical, soulless reimagining that misunderstood what made the original special. Rather than embracing timeless storytelling principles, the film appeared to be built around a checklist of corporate-mandated updates, designed to appeal to focus groups rather than genuine Disney fans. As a result, the project quickly spiraled into a PR disaster, with negative buzz overshadowing any excitement for the film's release. Instead of course-correcting, Disney doubled down on damage control, releasing vague reassurances, cutting controversial promotional clips, and ultimately scrambling to salvage a film that was already doomed by its own creative missteps. Behind the scenes, Snow White was plagued by constant rewrites, reshoots, and haphazard editing decisions, resulting in a final product riddled with inconsistencies. Sources suggest that major sequences were hastily rewritten and restructured on set, leading to glaring continuity errors that made it clear the film was assembled in a rush rather than carefully crafted. Characters inexplicably appear in two places at once, as if the filmmakers lost track of where they were supposed to be within the story. Costumes change mid-scene without explanation, leaving audiences wondering if they had missed something. Even dialogue betrays the chaotic production, as characters reference events that were cut from the final film, leaving behind puzzling gaps in the narrative. These mistakes, while small in isolation, collectively create a disjointed viewing experience, making it painfully obvious that the movie had undergone multiple frantic overhauls. The most egregious example of this rushed approach is the film's final act, which feels less like a carefully planned climax and more like a desperate attempt to cobble together whatever footage was available. Instead of a satisfying resolution, the ending feels abrupt and incomplete, an afterthought rather than the natural conclusion of Snow White's journey. The result is a finale that lacks emotional weight, leaving audiences feeling as if they've watched a film that never quite figured out what it wanted to say. Despite Disney's aggressive marketing campaign and repeated attempts to position Snow White 2025 as a groundbreaking reimagining of the beloved classic, the cold, hard numbers tell a very different story. The film's opening weekend was a massive disappointment, falling drastically short of expectations. Domestically, it barely scraped past the $90 million mark, a disastrous figure for a high-profile Disney remake. International markets fared no better, with the film underperforming in key regions like Europe and Asia, where audiences showed little interest in this new take on Snow White. Given the film's massive estimated budget of over $300 million, including production and marketing costs, it's quickly shaping up to be one of Disney's biggest financial failures in decades. Even factoring in potential streaming revenue down the line, the film's steep losses are undeniable, casting a shadow over Disney's ongoing strategy of live-action remakes. While Disney's PR team scrambled to spin the narrative, audiences were already making their voices heard across social media. Hashtags like #NotMySnowWhite and Disney Disaster have been trending for months, fueled by widespread disappointment and outright rejection of the film's creative choices. Memes mocking the movie have spread like wildfire, with some even comparing it to past Disney flops like John Carter or The Lone Ranger. Viral videos have further exposed just how little enthusiasm the film has generated. Clips of near-empty theaters during opening weekend have circulated widely, with some moviegoers documenting entire showings where they were the only ones present. Meanwhile, footage of untouched Snow White merchandise collecting dust in stores has only reinforced the perception that the film has failed to connect with audiences. All these factors, poor box office performance, brutal social media backlash, and widespread audience indifference, have cemented Snow White 2025 as one of Disney's most embarrassing misfires in recent history. Instead of revitalizing a beloved classic, the film has become a cautionary tale about what happens when a studio prioritizes corporate mandates over genuine storytelling. Behind closed doors, tensions are boiling over, threatening to fracture the already strained relationships between key players in Snow White's production. Rachel Zegler, the film's star, is reportedly furious about the removal of her most dramatic scenes, which she viewed as pivotal to her performance. Meanwhile, Greta Gerwig, whose influence on the project is undeniable, now finds herself at the center of a growing storm of scrutiny. As the fallout from the film's disastrous release continues to unfold, one thing is clear: Disney's live-action remake strategy may never recover from Snow White 2025.